this isn't a competition. This isn't, I'm the authoritative one, you're the little minion that has to listen to me down there. It's not like that. We're on a level playing field. I'm your parent, you're the child. We connect, we communicate, we share, we talk, we're honest, we make mistakes.
So thank you for joining me, Josie. I'm so excited to this. I must preface the conversation with I'm not a parent.
Okay.
I've been hanging around outside some local schools though, just to kind of get eavesdrop on some conversations to get some data for the convo.
Okay.
But no, we have a lot of friends locally that they have kids, and we have like friends over, and we kind of cater for the kids as well. So definitely, and obviously relatives and stuff like that. But essentially, it's really important for me to say that I don't have kids, because I can definitely get into some dangerous territory of being quite naive to what it is like.
No, but you know what? I love that. Be naive, because I could just really teach you. And
well,
I was naive. We were all naive, right? Before.
Yeah. I thought I'd bring you on now, and then when I do have kids, then I can you can come back on and be like, oh God, I was wrong, and how much you did teach me.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just start with a bit of an intro of yourself and how you kind of got into being kind of a parent coach or educating parents on raising children and all of that.
Yeah, sure. So I have 3 kids myself, but I started this journey, if you like, before I had children. I wasn't a coach then, but when I got pregnant, I was studying to be a Montessori teacher. I love Montessori education. I think it's really powerful. And I knew that's what I wanted to do when I had my own family. So that's how it started. And then I came across a lady called Dr. Jane Nelson, and she has a philosophy that she has created, really, called positive discipline, with another lady called Lynn Lott. And I found her really inspiring. Then I did lots of work around positive parenting, and just found that whole idea of being positive and understanding our children rather than punishing and screaming and shouting. I was like, I don't want to be a parent like that. But the reality is, sort of, how do you manage your kids if you're not shouting and screaming and punishing and making sure they're not feral? And that was basically how it started. I did these different courses, this different studying, and I was really interested in doing it that way with my kids. And people would ask me questions. That's how the coaching side started. People would say, why are you doing it that way? And it wasn't that my children were perfectly behaved, and they're still not. This is not about perfectly behaved children. But I knew what I was doing. I knew my approach, and I didn't get so sort of stressed and wound up, and I didn't try 100 different approaches and didn't read every book. I just sort of really connected to it. Sounds really weird, I suppose, when you say it like that. But then people would ask me questions. I started running a few workshops alongside my Montessori teaching, and it just grew and grew. And it was very organic, happened very naturally. I never planned to be doing this, but I generally can't imagine doing anything else in the world. I love what I do. And now I coach families every day, all the time. I don't teach anymore because the business became too big. And I run workshops, but with COVID, I now only do that online. And I think the best thing about it really is I really genuinely believe what I teach, and I've got like my own little guinea pigs that I try it out on, so I know it works, and the impact it has on families is just amazing. It's a total selfish feel good job, because I get paid and I tell other people stuff and they change and feel fabulous, and I feel fabulous because they feel fabulous. I mean, it's really quite selfish, I suppose, but I love it.
As long as you're honest with that. I think that's the main thing. Yeah, amazing. So what is Montessori teaching? Obviously, I know a bit about Montessori learning and how, what kind of the formula, let's say, is a part of that. But again, it's not mainstream, and a lot of people won't know what this is. So as that was the seed, could you give us a bit of a...
So Montessori, Maria Montessori was an Italian lady who created the Montessori philosophy. And basically what it is, it's about thinking about children differently. So children are drawn to learning naturally if you put them in the right environment. So you've got like a triangle, you've got the adult, the child, and the environment. If all 3 things are correct, then the child thrives in that environment. So the idea is you're creating independent children, confident children that aren't dictated to. You very much follow the child. So actually, if you are studying Montessori education, you would never refer to yourself as a teacher, you'd refer to yourself as a directress. So you direct rather than teach. So you introduce things to the children, they learn. and she has her curriculums basically have different areas to them. So you've got like maths, sensorial, and it goes on. But it sounds very academic from the outside when you think about it, because obviously you teach children this from like 2.5 years old, but it's all about following the child and their natural love of learning. The materials, you've got didactic materials that are beautiful wooden materials. I mean, if you just put in Maria Montessori educational materials, the materials that come up are beautiful wooden materials that your children want to touch and learn. And Montessori education is about learning through touch, learning through muscular impression. So we teach the whole child, and no child is ever told, right, sit down, you're going to learn this. This is what we're going to do today. It's very free thinking and about working on the child's education individually. So it's very little group work. It's about, and children totally socialize and have a lovely time, but it's about, right, that child's really interested in building. How are we going to take that to the next level for them? So for me, it's about having a bespoke curriculum for each child that really listens to the child. And what tends to happen in Montessori environments, which is the biggest feedback I had when I used to run my classrooms, was actually children don't get stressed or have so many tantrums. It's not like a loud environment where everyone's chaotic. It's actually really calm, because children are just really listened to in the world for them. So we have ground rules and boundaries. You don't go around them, but literally everything else is quite free. And it's about turn taking, and it's just lovely. I mean, I love that way of teaching children. None of my children then went into primary education like that, because that's only private sectors that really do that. There's only a couple of Montessori primary schools in the whole country, actually, but there's a lot of preschools. So that's Montessori education, really.
Why do you think that is? Why is
because that Montessori teachers need to be trained differently. And if you're not getting the training, if there's aren't enough people going to it to train, and also it's privately run. So there's lots of research to say that Montessori education is really beneficial, and some nurseries will adapt it. So, but primary education, to become a primary Montessori teacher, you can't even do the studying here. You have to go to America to do it. And it's quite bespoke, but beautiful. It's, I did consider opening one at one point. But when you have your own family, being a teacher isn't quite as easy as people think.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great explanation of it. I've been thinking before the conversation about, like, if something works, if something really works, especially something that, so basically most humans will do, parenting. If something, an approach or a style works, then how is that not scalable? It's like, I'm sure we can get into this a bit later, but it's like, I was trying to think of like a parenting style that can work. Of course, everyone's unique and everyone's individual, but if something really works, like when you're getting feedback from a child and so you're connecting with them and they're interested in something, which is making them more, their attention's there, for example. And if something works, why is that not, the norm, I guess? Because it's, this kind of stuff is more alternative. It's more, it's more kind of left field rather than the status quo, which is even more interesting, I think.
The Montessori curriculum and the government guidelines or expectations they would set out, it's quite hard to mold them together. So you would almost have to step out and become a slightly different thinking to have to become more of a free school, because the two, it would be very difficult for them to work together. It can be done, but it's tricky. And actually, if you're a Montessori educator and want to follow the child, the idea of then you've got to meet this guideline, it doesn't work. My head doesn't work like that. I'd be like, well, that's not the child's line right now. Ultimately, my belief is that children who are Montessori educated all the way through would ultimately end up so much more free and academically advanced, because they've been driven by love of learning rather than this is what you've got to do. So I think for me, that's where the big challenge comes in. And if your child doesn't want to read at 5, but you have to sit there and do phonetics again and again and again, that doesn't fit in with what the government are asking. Don't even get me started.
I'm getting you started. I wanted to test you today. It's like, I was talking to a friend the other couple of months ago about creativity, and I was like why is it not a primary focus? Because the studies, how beneficial it is, and that's what we all really want for our children, to be creative, to be imaginative, of the best learning, the best things come from that. But he was like, it's not measurable. You can't measure creativity. It's not something you can test for. And it's like so interesting when you take a step back and think, okay, I'll get it now. with that kind of, you know, that approach that we've taken, for whatever reason, that we're arbitrarily testing and putting these kind of deadlines and studies. Like, everybody listening to this will know at school they asked, why are we learning this? Or like, this, I'm not interested in this. Well, why is this happening? And the response they got is, because you'll get tested on it, or because I say so, or because this is what we're teaching. But when something isn't, it doesn't. I had this big revelation when I went on a long cycle ride. I cycled all the way from London to Istanbul, and I was doing a lot of thinking. And I kind of came to the conclusion, it wasn't anything profound, but it really hit me that I was very much a C grade student at school, and very average, very kind of mediocre from what I was getting the feedback from, what I thought, labeling myself and really pigeoning myself into that. And it wasn't until I left school to go on to further education, to go to university, that I actually gathered this like yearning for learning. I was like really like curious and developed like a real passion for learning. Like until after education, ironically enough. But I had this revelation that I was like, okay, so I wasn't actually a CGO student. I was just a CGO student at the things that they wanted me to learn.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that every parent who's listening to this needs to remember, because it's very easy to get caught up in that, because as a parent, you obviously want your child to achieve as much as they can in their life. And I don't mean academically, I mean for themselves: happy, confidence, independence, capable, resilience, dealing with new situations. You want to put your child and give them all of that. So the idea that, oh, they might be the one struggling in school, they might be the one that's finding it harder, you do worry as a parent. You can't not. But actually, just remembering what you said, they're so important. I mean, the joke of it is, and I tell my daughter this all the time, she got one of her reports back and it said engages in too much conversation in class. And I was like, do you know that I literally had that on my school report every single year throughout my whole education? Josie talks too much. And I was like, and now I get paid for it. I was like, it can't be that bad, so it's so relative. And actually, as a parent, to just keep bringing that out in your child. And my biggest thing is about building two things: confidence in our children and self-belief. And if you can get that and keep that in your children and nurture that, hopefully then they go off to do and be whatever they want to be, whatever that looks like to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kind of pivot from the education side of things. How is there like an age group you work with like, or is it literally all across the board up until?
So it is all across the board, but I tend to have similar challenges at different ages. So I work with toddlers and preschoolers quite a lot. So I don't work even with the child. I work with the parent. The parent works with their own child. I don't even engage with the child. So where you've got parents that, my first child was really good, and now the second child's been really challenging. I don't know what to do, or what that approach worked for my child, and they listened, and now it doesn't work for this child. So actually, what parents think is we have to parent the same for the same children, whereas that's not true. Every single child needs a different approach. So you have the same boundaries and the same expectations and rules, but actually, you need to go back a bit and see what works for each child. Some children are attention driven, attention seeking, and they need attention more. Others like power and control. Others don't feel confident and can't. So the idea of saying certain things to one child would hurt one child. Another child would be like, yeah, great, I can do it. So it's about really, really understanding your children individually. It's very, very important, rather than that work for them, that will work for them. So that's one group of people that I have. Then you get the classic, they're not listening, they're being disrespectful, I ask them to do things, and that very much comes up between 6 and 11. Then you get the hormonal years, where hormones come in and stress comes in, and understanding that part about them, because children do change then. It can be really hard as a parent to see that. So it's like your little baby is now being rude and sort of, got a bit of an attitude going on. And it's like, oh, it hurts as a parent. So again, that's another stage. So I work with all different ages. And it just depends, really.
Yeah, I guess the parents thinking seemingly this is irrational behavior, shouting, being violent, and all these kind of, I guess, signals of something's not quite right. or, you know, I mean, I got in contact with pretty much everyone who I know who has children, just to say if they are dealing with anything, they want to ask you anything. And obviously the biggest thing that I got back collectively was curbing behavior. But I think the first thing of that for me, as always, is like understanding this black and white thinking of like good and bad, and like maybe checking in with that, the language that we use to determine bad behavior, because what is bad for us is really nothing in context, like everything in context. What's bad for what we think is bad might not necessarily be what the child knows or feels is bad. Could you kind of
oh my God, you totally need to be a parent already. This is brilliant thinking. You're like so far ahead of so many people that I first meet. So this is such a big topic. Good and bad is very much how we talk about our children. So they're being good, they're being bad, be a good girl, you're being bad. It's crazy language, really, because that's how you and me were probably parented, you know, a long time ago, really, now. And it's moved on so much since then. So the idea that children are bad or good is actually not right. So you mean they're not behaving the way you want them to behave right now, so you're telling me that makes them bad? But hang on, what about when I might not be behaving the way my husband wants me to behave, or my bad wife? It's about all based on feeling. So children misbehave because they're not feeling good about something. There is always a reason why children misbehave. Just because you don't know what it is, it doesn't mean it's not valid. And also, even if you don't agree with it, doesn't mean it's not valid. So if your child, you know, parents listen to this will know, I buttered the toast wrong, I cut the banana wrong, whatever, and that upsets them. It doesn't matter whether you think that's valid, you know, that's relevant or valid. The point is that's how they feel. That's not how they want it done. And so being empathetic about that and understanding that, it doesn't mean you have to give in to them. It doesn't mean you go, oh, okay, I'll get you a new banana and cut it the way you want. I'm not even saying you have to do that. But by then labeling that as bad behavior is ridiculous, because it's not bad behavior. And if we keep labeling our children as bad behavior, this isn't good behavior, and then believing that about themselves, they stop sharing how they feel because they're being bad. So then we end up with adults in society that don't know about their feelings, don't know how they feel, don't understand, and they've just got potentially a lot of anger, or maybe they feel low, or they don't know how to handle themselves, or they don't have a deep relationship because they don't know how to get to that level. So all of this parenting stuff is actually really important long term. It's not about now, it's about actually who we create as our children when they're adults living in the world, and how they manage themselves in so many areas. I mean, there's so much to life, and we focus so much on school and getting the spellings right and 10 out of 10. But actually, that is so insignificant when you're thinking about children not understand their feelings and how to handle themselves and how to deal with frustration and anger. And anger's allowed, and being badly behaved is allowed. We're all allowed to do that. And actually, if we think about it as adults, we behave badly all the time, you know, but we just hide it, or we don't tell anyone we did it, or someone goes, oh, don't worry about it. You know, we are not perfectly behaved all the time. When I opened the fridge this morning, I ran out of milk, and I was effing and blinding about the fact there's no milk. You know, that's not well behaved, that's not good behavior, Josie. But no one saw me do it, and I just sort of moved on and went to the coffee shop instead. And I can fix my own problems again, remember, because I'm an adult. Whereas children can't necessarily do that. So actually, when we think of children as everything is feeling based, all behavior is based on feeling, and it's about us understanding the belief behind the behavior, what is making that behavior happen. We fix the feeling, the misbehavior goes. It's quite remarkable. So instead of dealing with the behavior, you deal with the feeling. Behavior goes. The behavior is literally like the top hat. It doesn't mean anything. It's the bit that's underneath. So that's actually, as a parent, much easier to relate to, because then we're thinking, oh, my baby, I love my kids, I love my children, I want them to feel good and be happy. And when you understand actually they're behaving like that because they're not feeling good, the way you approach it's totally different. You don't throw out punishments or get angry or scream and shout or threaten, because you love your children, you care about them feeling good. And actually, that's a big turning point for a lot of families I work with. When they understand that actually this is happening because they're not feeling good, they instantly greet their child with more kindness, more empathy, more understanding, and the behavior goes away. Quite literally just goes away. The behavior was basically like warning signs. Help me. I need attention. I want some power in my life. I'm feeling bad. I'm going to seek revenge. And all those words sound terrible. Oh, my child seeks revenge, or my child's attention seeking. My child wants power. I don't want a child like that. Every single child in the world does it. Every adult does it as well. It's quite interesting. You can watch other adults do it all the time, and it's hilarious. But it's our understanding that, and we fight our children instead. No, I'm going to ignore you and not give you attention. But they're asking for attention. Well, then if I give it to them, that means I'm giving in to them. No, that doesn't. You give them attention in a way that works for you. Power. My child wants power. People say to me, I'm always arguing with my child. They always want control. You can't argue with your child about control unless you're entered in the power struggle. So if you don't enter in the power struggle, there's no one they can have an argument with. So you give them power, but in a way that works for them, a way that works for you. So do you want to help with dinner? Do you want to set the table? Do you want to choose what's for dinner? Get them involved, give them responsibility, make them feel important, make them feel significant. And then revenge, I'm hurting, so I'll hurt others. It's a classic. So some of our children's biggest behaviors, the ones as parents where you feel shocked or disappointed or disbelieving or sad, those feelings where you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe my child's just done that. That is usually where a child is basically feels revenge. But revenge is not calculated in the way that we think of it as like a dark movie. It's revenge as in, I'm hurting, I'm going to hurt. And it's not conscious. They're not there sitting there calculating a plan. It's just feeling. And it's the same as us. If we have an argument with someone and they call us a name, we tend to call them a name back, right? Because we're hurting, we hurt back, we lash out. It's normal behavior. But when children do it, we don't understand it as normal. We think, gosh, you're so rude, or you're so bad, or you're so unkind. And actually what that child, when they're in that place, needs more than anything is unconditional love and empathy to go, doesn't matter. I love you no matter what. So my 6-year-old son the other day, last Monday, went to a birthday party, came back from the birthday party, and his friend had said he could take one of his new toys that he'd got, which was very nice for his friend. And I said, Bill's actually not going to do that because his friend's just been given it. He said, oh, I'll give it back tomorrow at school. I said, no, that's not what we're going to do. So he was obviously upset by that. He was a long day at school. He then had a birthday party. He's only 6. So he comes home, Mummy, I hate you. Mummy, you're the worst mummy ever. Now, that doesn't impact me at all when he speaks to me like that, because that is basic revenge. I'm feeling hurt. I'm going to hurt. So it's not that he hates me. It's none of those things. But as parents, we take that personally. We let it hurt us. So when it hurts us, we then behave, well, actually, you were being spoiled. You're not very nice. I said no, go to bed. You're not having a story. You know, we behave exactly the same way as our children. You know, I'm now feeling hurt, so I'm going to hurt you. Whereas actually, all he needs is empathy, kindness, and understanding. So we work through that. And then, you know, after 5-10 minutes, Mommy, I'm so sorry. I love you. I didn't mean it. You're the best mommy in the world. Da, 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 da. So because I've got in and I've made him feel loved and understood, we're allowed to feel angry. This idea that behavior is bad and my child's misbehaving badly. My children are not perfectly behaved. I am not perfectly behaved. I've got no ambition or goal for my children to be perfectly behaved, because that's not real life. What I want them to do is know how to handle their emotions and be able to do the right thing based on what they believe inside, rather than what's extrinsic or expected motivation. That's a different topic. I'm going off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do we develop that relationship with the feeling then? Or like get to know our children of like, what is really the cause of this behavior? Like if that's where the goal is, it's like you're acting out. How do you, obviously the connection, I know you talk about connection, developing a connection with your child, and they believe that you love them, etc.
Yeah. So you have to do a little bit of work to get there, but it's quite easy. So that's why people come to me to work with me, really, to help me explain how that works. So attention-seeking behavior is when your child, I'll tell you a little bit now, but it's a bit deeper than what we'll be able to talk about in the next 5 minutes or so. But attention-seeking behavior is when your child makes you feel annoyed. So when your child makes you feel annoyed, such as that, maybe you're trying to talk to someone, they're like pulling on your arm, or mum, or dad, or you're at the table and they're like constantly banging the table, and you're asking them to stop, and they stop and they do it again. So what we tend to do is we tell our children off for that. Whereas that behavior is happening for a reason. So they are asking for attention. So it might be that you've sat at the dinner table and you've spoken to one child, and one child's done something at school or wants to share a story, and the other child's then feeling like, hang on, I want a little bit of time and attention. So they're now banging the table. So it's about understanding why they're doing it. Okay. So that's the first one. So then you would say, oh, darling, I'm sure you've got something to tell us. I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say. Let's just finish listening to Jack speak, and then we're going to listen to what you've got to say. Really want to know what you did in PE today at school. Okay. So then that child then feels heard. They've got their attention. They've stopped. You then finish the conversation with the other child. Say, tell us about your day. Feeling, they feel good. They feel understood. The misbehavior's gone because you've spoken to the feeling. Okay. Then power is another one. So they want to feel powerful, they want to have power, they want to be the boss, they want to be in control. So if you've got a child that's at school all day, and I say this to all the parents that I work with, got a child that's been at school or at nursery all day, and then they come home all day, even though they may well enjoy school, they have been told what to do. Sit here, do this, lunchtime's this time, you're eating this, you're coming in at this time. They're told what to do all day. Then they come out of school, and then we tell them what to do. So they might go to an after school club. Then we come home, right, sit down at dinner, right, have a shower, right, do your homework, right, into bed 7:00, whatever it is. So the whole day they've been told what to do and dictated to. And then we wonder why why they're making us feel irritated, because they're doing these behaviors that make us feel irritated, because they're saying, hang on, I want some control and power in my life. I don't want to be constantly told what to do. Mm-hmm. So a really good way to almost fix that immediately in most households. It can still come up in other areas, and these do come up. So this isn't like once in a month thing. These happen throughout a week, 5 or 6 times. Families are dealing with these things. Very, very normal, all of this to come up. But one thing to help with the power is the first 45 minutes after school or nursery, you don't tell your child off. You just accept and move on. It's a really, really good way to communicate. So let's say you collect one child from school. That's the wrong snack. We would respond, darling, that was the snack you picked this morning. The snack's absolutely fine. Have that or have nothing. Okay, so you wouldn't say that. So that's the wrong snack. Okay, darling, would you still like to eat that today, or would you like to get home and have something else? So you're almost accepting and tolerating for 45 minutes. And the reason being is that's them getting all that out from the day. Mm. You know, when Miss Jones at lunchtime said that they couldn't sit next to Freddie, even though Freddie said he wanted to sit next to him. When Miss Grove said she had to eat the peas and he didn't want to actually eat the peas, but he ate them anyway. When he was told off for not sharing the football at lunchtime, but actually he was the one that got the football first. You know, so all day, all these little things, I refer to them as buckets. In our house, we call them buckets. But all these little things have happened throughout the day. And now they've come and seen you. And it's like, oh, my safe person, my safe place. And it's all going to come out. Mm-hmm. So then you're walking along the road and they shove their sister. You don't say anything. You just take them to the other hand. Say, why don't you walk on this side of me, darling? They're in the car. They're kicking the car seat. You go, you give them a hug. You gently touch their legs to remind them not to do it, but you move on. But you're not telling them off, dictating to them, throwing punishments out there, threats out there. Right, if you do that, you're not going to football later. If you do that, you're not going to have pudding later. It just means nothing. And what also then happens is our children lose that connection and depth with us, where they don't open up on a deeper level and really communicate with us openly, because they know they're going to get told off. And then the behavior just keeps coming up anyway. Then you've got revenge. And revenge is the example I gave you with my son, where he's saying, you're the worst mummy ever, because he's hurting. So I'm hurting, I'm going to hurt. And as parents, the biggest thing we do is we take it personally. But if you're in a situation, your child's hurting you, more emotionally than physically usually, and you'll think, God, why are they doing this? This isn't kind. This hurts, right? Yeah, after everything I do for you, this hurts. When we feel like that, that is where they're saying, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling loved. Love me, love me, love me. And when you do that, again, the misbehavior goes.
Yeah, I think most of this you can extrapolate, because I'm just having like feelings. It's resonating, like of how we just deal with our partner or deal with other humans in society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like taking things personally, and also just not asking them, it's not why are you doing the things you're doing? It's actually what happened to you before that.
Yeah.
There's an Oprah Winfrey book about what happened to you and like the trauma of all that. And it does just speak to that somewhat, of like how we almost relate everything to other people. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
But something you said then, I remember visiting my friend and his daughter would come in from school and I'd be there and she would point me and tell me off and put me in the corner, and like just as like a game. But it was clear to me that she was doing all the things to me that she was getting done at school, like to her. And it was just like, wow, like this is almost like what you feel is like normal to do to other people. Mm-hmm. And tell them what to do, tell them to sit in the corner, you've been bad, you do this. And you're not getting any food. And it was just so kind of eye-opening. But it is a kind of that dictating to, and most of it is like a fear-induced state of being. It's like, oh, I'm not going to do this because I'm almost afraid of doing that wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And then that speaks to a part of you which makes you anxious and stressed, and then you can't really focus or think clearly because of that.
Yes, I do an activity with people I work with when I do my workshops, and I basically shout at the room in a very aggressive, frightening way. And then afterwards, when you ask them how they feel, all the words that you'd expect to come out: scared, intimidated, unloved. But they cannot, I think in the whole 6 or 7 years of doing this activity, and I've done it a lot, I think one person in that whole time has been able to tell me what I actually said. Because afterwards I say, what did I say? What words were I saying? What's I talking about? And afterwards, I don't know.
Yeah.
They literally don't know. And these are adults. They just don't know. So it just, if they don't know and they're in a room on a course learning this stuff, like meant to be, they're not scared, they're not overwhelmed. What chance we have of our children hearing it?
When me and my partner have conflict, like we relate back to what we said to each other, or what you said, or what I said, and we never get it right.
Yeah.
It's always kind of how we've interpreted it, or how we thought we heard it, or it's not even that. It's literally just, I'm so stressed and anxious right now that I can't even think straight. You know?
Yeah.
And I guess
absolutely.
that kind of feeds into all of this, really. What about I want to paint a picture that actually happened to me the other day, which is quite an interesting, and I guess it's more an example of like what would a parent do in this situation, and it's kind of classic. But I was in Sainsbury's, and this woman was clearly very stressed and anxious, and she was really like at a kind of last tether. She had a baby in a pram, and the other kid, maybe 4, was running around the shop and just disappeared. And she was like, I've got a baby in a pram, and she was screaming. And as the guy in the store, there are other people there, I was like, okay, maybe it's best if I don't do anything right now, and I'll let someone else. And there was other women around, and obviously you got COVID going on, and she was just really, she just didn't know what to do. But the kid found it funny. And sometimes that is a classic example of like, a kid finds it funny, running around, they're playing, but you're deadly being serious. There's some like imminent danger, there's the road there, or there's all these kind of external factors that are obviously on the mind of the parent. So in that situation, what would you suggest to kind of be the best approach?
So that's the reason that happened, was because and this is in no way an insult to the parent, goodness me, she had it full on. But the reason that happened was because she didn't set the ground rules before. So she didn't set the expectation. The expectation groundwork learning hasn't gone in. So that's what you teach before something happens. So that probably wasn't the first time that happened to her, because if it was the first time, they wouldn't have run as far. They'd have gone at the end of the aisle and thought they were being really brave. So let's imagine, I mean, that wouldn't have happened with me and my children, because I would have done the teaching before, but let's imagine that was the situation that happened. Then the first thing you do is you take the child and you walk out the store immediately. And actually the best thing to do is almost not tell the child off. Then you go outside the store, you go down on your knees, bend down low, and you look at the child's face and you say, you frightened me. I didn't know where you were. You made me scared. And you talk to the child's feeling behind it. And then you probably do have to go home at that point, because you have to then reset and reconnect and reteach. Most places they go after that because the feeling's still in there. It's still going to be there. So that's a case of you go to the park after, you go to the park before, but also setting expectations of what realistic for a child to be able to do. But that's an individual process where you know your children individually. And also there's always going to be cases, guys, however well you plan it, however much work you do, where something's going to go wrong. We've all been in that situation where the child might have run off, or the child's thrown the food in the restaurant, or had a tantrum, whatever it might be. You can't see everything, but about when it happens, knowing what you're going to do, not what you're going to make your child do. It's a really good line to follow in your parenting, because you can't make your child actually do anything, and you wouldn't want to, but you know what you can do. It's about controlling ourselves and what we are willing to do and we are willing to accept. So yeah, there's probably quite a few reasons as to why that happened. And in no way, again, that's a negative to the mum. And actually, I think it's really important for me to say, if you're listening to me the first time, you don't know me, I'm not judgmental. So I might know some things that other people don't know, and I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time as a parent. But people come to learn to try and be better. So that's amazing. Anyone that's, decides to work together in any capacity, they're only there because they want to do better. So already they're a great parent. Already they're brilliant because they're proactively trying to do more and learn more and be better. So it's not about feeling guilty or bad about what you may have done. You might have to repair a little bit, might have to learn a few new tools, but about going forward, what am I going to do differently now I have the information, right? If you don't have the information, you can't do it. So I think it's really important that anyone that may be listening, please don't feel guilty, because that's not what this is about. We're all doing the best we can with what we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed in that the child was almost looking for feedback from like other people to kind of bring into it as this like, this is fun, this is funny. And she was almost like playing off those kind of strangers.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite interesting. But yeah, that reset, reconnect and kind of reteach really stuck out, I think. But yeah, it's I guess there was another situation where a parent said to their child, put the brolly away and be a good girl. And I also want to talk about the kind of leveraging of like certain things, because I do observe that quite a lot of like, okay, if you do this, you'll get this, and kind of leveraging almost something that they want to then, and it's quite a classic. I think everyone would have done that in their parenting kind of life. It was like leveraging a good thing over favoring that.
Yeah, a lot of people I have that I work with are like, Josie, I can't get my child to do anything unless I give them something in return. And that's the reason why you don't want to really do it, because it just makes parenting so hard, because you've always got to have something ready to offer your child. For me, that's part of a slightly bigger conversation, in the sense that we want our children to be intrinsically motivated. We want our children to do things because they know it's the right thing. And that's just what you do. But that takes a little bit of learning, but it's really worth doing that. And that starts with praise, encouragement instead of praise. So most of this that you're referring to is based on praise and reward, and then punishment. Whereas in what I teach, I don't do any of that. I don't praise my children at all, and I don't punish my children at all. I'm massively encouraging. My God, I'm like their biggest cheerleader. I'm really on their team, but I don't praise them. So I don't say good girl. I don't say you got top marks, so proud of you. I don't say 10 out of 10. I don't say, oh, you're so intelligent. I don't say anything to do with good or praise. I don't say.
I think that's really radical for some people.
Huge. And actually, parents praise their kids all the time because they love them and they want to show them they love them, and they're, oh, you're so brilliant. I totally get why they do it, but
that love is then there. Like I had this, and this was a big realization of like my template of love, how I relate to love. So obviously your template of love is your mum and dad, and what you look to them as like your first visual of what love is, and where you receive love and get love, and where that kind of comes from, and of course cultural things play into all this, but my mum and dad would say, oh, well done, I love you, when you've done something good. And it played into my relationship when Nina would say she loves me, and I would look around to be like, oh, what have I done? Like, what have I done anything? Because I thought the love was based on something external.
Yeah. And isn't that sad? Because no parent would ever want their child to believe that, because it's not true. We actually all love our children unconditionally. I mean, there might be days where you think, gosh, you're a handful, but it's never based on love. But as children, that's exactly right. That's exactly what happens. So I believe my value, and I believe my worth and my love on how others tell me I'm good. And actually, when you take that away, children then don't feel that. So you can encourage them. You use language such as, tell me about that. I'm really interested to hear. I like the way you use that color on that picture. What do you think? How do you feel? I mean, it's amazing when your child does something amazing and turns around and says, I'm so proud of myself. I mean, it's absolutely like a tear-jerking moment as a parent, because they feel proud of themselves. They don't need you to say you're proud of them. It doesn't matter what I think. How do you feel? How do you feel about what you have done? And they say, I feel brilliant. And I was like, that is fantastic. That is exactly what's important here.
Could that then result in probably something that me and many others face in our adult life, is like the external validation of like others, and it will feed into this. Of course,
it's huge.
Other
it's
factors.
So big. It's so related.
Because it's almost like some of the things I do, I'm like, it's not. Yeah, how can me being proud of it? I've never felt that proud feeling. It almost like I'm looking for other people to confirm it for me, to make me feel proud.
But imagine your life if you didn't have that. Imagine if you just did things because it felt good for you. That is so powerful. It is so, so powerful. The idea that you could do this podcast and you could do well and you could feel really proud of yourself. Look what I've done. I've worked really hard and I've done really well and I feel really proud of yourself. That makes you feel good. Whereas, I don't know, you might go to your mum and dad. Mum and dad, I had this really cool guest on. I mean, her name happened to be Josie. No, I'm joking. No, but mum and dad had a really cool guest on, and your mum and dad were like, oh, okay. And you'll think, oh, was that not really a good guest then? I remember my dad did it to me. I was very much praised as a child. And I mean, he's no idea that he did this. But I worked with a celebrity, quite an amazing celebrity. So for me, I was like, wow, you know, they could have picked so many people and they picked me. I felt really, really amazing. And I called my dad and I told my dad, and I was really high, like, oh my God, Dad, you won't believe this. Da, 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 da. And he went, oh, Jose, I'm just going to a restaurant. Well done, it's really good. He lives in America. And he hung up the phone. And I was like, I looked at my husband. I went, oh my God, Billy, he wasn't even impressed. He wasn't even like, he didn't even say he's proud. He wasn't even impressed or anything. And he turned and he said, Josie, how do you feel? I think it's like probably the biggest moment of my coaching career so far, actually. And he went, so how do you feel? I said, I feel amazing. He said, so why are you letting him in any way make you feel different? And of course, I teach this stuff. And that was so big for me, where we realize how we let other people's opinions and feelings dictate what we feel about what we are or are not doing. And people have said to me, but Josie, then how do they know they're doing good? Children know. When you're working with a 2.5-year-old building the Montessori pink stair, it's called, and they make that stair for the first time on their own, that child's face lights up. And every part of you inside wants to go, oh my God, you're amazing. Look, you did the pink tower. We've been doing this for weeks and weeks. And you can finally do it. Wow, wow, wow. But actually, do you know what? If I did that, I'd take away all of what they're feeling. It would become about what I think about it. It doesn't matter what I think. And you see this child then walk around this little pink tower that they've made. It's 10 blocks moving up in different sizes, from 10 centimeters to a centimeter. And they built it all centrally. And they walk around, they admire their work. Their face lights up. It is so incredible. And they're 2.5. And then that builds self-confidence and self-belief. That bit inside, you see this sudden child that might have a low shrunk shoulder standing tall and proud. There's nothing to do with me. And you see this confidence grow in this child, and it's so beautiful to observe. And actually, when you do it with your own children, you see their confidence grow. It's just magical to see. But I totally get, going back to your point, this is a massive alien concept, and I've just thrown this out there in a 5-minute conversation, and it's a lot bigger, but it's remarkable.
I think it feeds into the kind of what we've lost touch with in terms of being human, what it means to be human. For me, it's like we've lost the understanding of like who we are, what is our natural template, what are we naturally born into this world innately, like what do we innately like have, or like compassion, like humankind, like kindness is like a primary thing in our species, and we've almost lost that idea of what it means to be human. We're driven by fear of like, oh, if I don't curb it this way, it's going to lead into inevitable decline, you know, of just unhappiness. But it's more, and what I'm getting from you is more about that cultivating the environment to allow all of these things to just innately come out.
Absolutely. And do you know what? There's so much research being done on it now. A lady called Carol Dweck, a lot of people know her. If you look her up on YouTube and just look up praise versus encouragement, she's done some incredible work and research. And one of the most obvious pieces of research she did was she had 2 groups of children, both academically the same. And they were asked to do some, I think it was maths papers she got them to do. And one group at the end of their first set of maths group was said, thank you so much. Really appreciate you doing that. Really appreciate the effort you put in. Thanks very much. The other group were told, yep, you got top marks. Well done. Then they were asked, do you want to do it again? Everyone said, can you help me again? Can you do it again? Everyone said yes in both groups. Then the first group, again, thanks very much. Really appreciate you helping. It's really helping me out. I can see you've tried hard. First group. Second group didn't get top marks this time. I mean, I don't even know if she marked them, but they got much less. So then when they were asked to do it again, everyone in the group that were encouraged said yes again. In the second group, some like, no, thanks. I'm not going to do another one. And then again, the same thing happened and less dropped off again. So it shows that we are motivating our children based on the result. Whereas actually, if you motivate them on the doing, they try harder and consistently, and they don't give up, and they don't let failure control who they are. So children that are praised are less risk takers. And those that aren't praised, who are only encouraged, they aren't fearful of what's going to happen. There's not a win or lose, only for themselves, right? But it's about the doing, it's the process, it's the try. It's not about the good, bad, failure, win. And it makes a huge difference to how we approach things in life. And then actually, if we turn it around the other way, okay, so it's all very well. People could say, oh, if I say good girl when they did something good, it's not going to impact them too much. Fine, you could argue that point. But let's go the other way. What when they don't do it right? What when they're not good? What when they're bad? That was a bad result. You didn't do well. One of my children did a spelling test the other day. And she's actually very good at spelling. And she doesn't normally practice so well because she's so good at spelling. Anyway, she did this particular spelling test. And she came back with a really low mark, lowest mark she's ever got. And she came back, she goes, Mum, I got this on my spelling. I said, okay. I said, how do you feel about that? And I mean, it was considered what we would say a bad mark in comparison to what she normally does, right? I said, how do you feel about that? And she goes, well, and actually when I'm having this conversation, I'm not desperately looking at her in eye contact, like, how do you feel about that? Just really cool, relaxed conversation, right? Yeah, how do you feel about that? She said, she goes, well, I'm not very happy about that. I said, okay, why? And she said, well, because I know I could do better. I said, okay. I said, so what might you do differently next time? And she said, well, I'm going to practice next time. I didn't practice. And I said, okay, so you've decided that you didn't like the mark and that you're going to practice next time. I said, okay, what does that look like then? What does the plan for practicing look like? When are you going to do it? Like, what does that look like for you? And I said, and also, what would you be happy with? What would the mark that you'd be happy with? And she said, well, I'll be happy if I only got one wrong, I'd be all right with. But I know that I can do it if I, practice. It's like, okay. I said, so it sounds like you've come up with a great plan and you've decided that you're going to do something differently. So it sounds like a good plan. And I was really relaxed about it. And there was someone who was with me. I can't remember who it was now, but they overheard my conversation. And they said, aren't you going to tell your child off? I said, why am I going to tell her off? They said, well, her mark was really bad. And I said, I know it was bad, but she knows it was bad. What am I going to tell her? What am I telling her off for? She's told me it was bad. I didn't tell her. I said, you need to. I said, okay, so why are we telling our children off? So this is what's really, really interesting. So why would I tell my child off when they already know that they want to do better themselves? What am I telling them off for? They've told me, they've worked it out for themselves. So I don't need to tell her off. So the idea that because they've done wrong, we need to tell them off and punish them. If your child's done something that's, not good enough or whatever it might be. This isn't a good example of not good enough because this is her own journey. But let's imagine your child's done something they shouldn't have done. They've hit a sibling, they've thrown a chair, they've dropped a plate on purpose, whatever it might be. And they're clearing it up knowing that what they've done isn't the right thing to do.
Yeah, you can see it in their eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Why would you then tell them off? They've learned through the process. You might then, after they've cleared it up or dealt with it, go, what do you think you could do differently next time, darling? Or was there a reason why that happened? But they're stepping up and taking responsibility, and they've learned from that, opportunity of learning. I call mistakes from wonderful opportunities to learn. So they've already learned. Why would we then tell them off? Because if you tell them off, then they don't come to you with it next time. Well, I know I've done wrong. My daughter lost her coat at school last week. She came home from school. It was in the back of her jacket. It was in the back of her rucksack, sort of through the loop. And as she scooted home, she'd lost it. And she got home, she's like, oh my goodness, I've lost my coat. You could see that she was gutted. So we walked back, we couldn't find it. It wasn't there. But she was gutted. She felt bad that she'd lost her coat. So why am I then going to tell her off and make her feel guilty and potentially punish her for losing her coat?
Yeah.
And just, fast forward, this approach does work because I've done it with all three of my children. I have capable, confident children that work hard and try hard and generally do the right thing. I mean, I'm sure they make mistakes along the way, but it's not like they've come out the other end going, well, I'll just throw everything and I'll lose my coat and I won't do my spellings and I don't care about life. Actually, it makes them responsible. They care. They're responsible for things. They take pride in things. They are accountable to themselves.
Yeah. One of the biggest things through my childhood, I never really felt fully safe to just be honest. Like something went wrong, I'd ignore it. I'd like, God, what am I going to do? I can't possibly talk to my parents about this because it's only going to end in just more problems. Almost, it's more like more anxiety, more kind of feelings of I've let people down, or when I know I've let them down.
Yeah, and when you think about us as adults, right? If you've done something wrong in your life or you've messed up, you will always ring your friend who's kind, supportive, empathetic, and helps you come up with a solution. You don't ring that friend that goes, oh my God, what did you do? That's terrible. Oh, wow. Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And you're like, I know, I'm ringing you up because I've made a mistake and you're telling me I shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't have done it. So actually, how do we want to greet our children? Some people have got parents that I can ring my mum and tell her anything. And she's so empathetic, so supportive, so kind. Josie, that wasn't the best decision. I know, mum, right, and just helps me, doesn't make me feel bad. Whereas there's other people that you would choose not to ring because they're just going to lecture you or tell you off or give you their really good opinion. So it's the same with parents. Like, what do we want our children to think of us? That she can come to me and share everything. We've got a bit of a thing in my house. If my kids have done something that they know, isn't the right thing, and they haven't done anything for a while. I think the last time this happened was probably in COVID, right? They did something. And one of my daughters came up to me, she goes, Mum, I've done something. It wasn't the right thing to do. And I know you're not going to tell me off, but your face might have a reaction that I might not like. And I was like, yeah, good point. So I was like, I'm just going to cover my face with a cushion. You can tell me, I can make all the faces I want behind the cushion, and then I'll come out and we'll talk about it. So that would be really, really good. So that's what we did. So I was like, right, cushion's up, I'm ready. And I said, just remember, I always appreciate you telling me. So whatever it is, thank you for telling me. And I put the cushion up. She told me what it was. And I took the cushion down. And I was like, okay, thanks for telling me. Right, let's think of a solution.
I want that to be a starting of a meme or a starting of some sort of viral kids telling their parents something that they've hidden for a very long time. The ornament is broken and they've never told them. Put the cushion there. Let's not have a reaction in front of the child. Yeah, absolutely. Is there a case for this, that a child is not being honest and they are pretending to be sorry, and then you're like, what then? Like,
yeah, so this is another thing, right? So we have this big thing about sorry, but actually, how often
let's talk about apologies.
So how often have you had an argument with someone and then not been ready to say sorry? I can name hundreds.
Yeah.
So my husband jokes about it with me. It takes me a day to apologize. I mean, I'm very rarely wrong. If my husband hears this, I have to put that out there, right? But to say sorry is hard and it doesn't come straight away. And we have this thing when we teach our children, right? You have to say sorry, you have to say sorry. You don't have to say sorry. You have to show empathy. I think that's different. You have to show an understanding towards the other person and the impact you've had on how they feel. So from a young age, you can teach your child, do you want to get, we might say, do you want to give them a hug? Do you want to ask them if there's anything they can do to help you? You can do to help them. Do you want to ask them if they want to play a game? So actually that's kindness. The actual words, I'm sorry, don't always need to come. And I think we push that on our children so often. You see it, don't you? A child that says sorry for everything they do. And you've got a child that can go, oh, sorry. But actually, they don't mean sorry. They've just been programmed from a young age. Say sorry.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, it's about the really meaning it and the empathy. Also, you don't always have to feel bad straight away. So especially with siblings, my girls are 10 and 12, very, very good friends. And when they argue, they're going to argue. And one of them isn't going to be empathetic or sorry straight away. but she's going to need some time by herself. She's going to need to, to calm down, think about it, reflect, maybe have a hug, maybe have some time alone, whatever she wants to do. And then later they'll come back together and like, yeah, that was a bit much. Sorry about that. And they'll say, okay.
Yeah, I read a study once that as British people, we say sorry over 1,000 times a year, which is like more than 3 times a day. So we have this kind of over apologetic society when we bump into someone. And again, it's like checking in with the language. I could talk to you for so long. I do want to talk about preparing to be a parent, because obviously more relevant to myself. And like, how can we kind of cultivate the language, that relationship with ourselves? Do you ever tap into this at all in your stuff, like preparing to be parents? Of course, can you ever be ready? No, but that doesn't mean you can't do things and work on the relationship you've got with yourself or with your partner to bring about a more expansive like space, And
it's a great question, and there's absolutely things you can do. I've worked with many people before they've become parents in preparation. I mean, the first thing is to be open to listening. Like, the fact that you're asking that question is amazing. There's some great books you can read, but for me, it's about sort of understanding. There's lots of work you can do, but the few things that jump up that would be the go-tos would be, what did you like and what did you not like in your own parenting as a child? What you experienced? What bits felt good? What bits didn't feel good? And why? Like, what was it about it? So it's not about sitting there and pulling your parents apart, because, as parents, we're only doing our best job. The reality is there's more feedback, there's more research now, there's more information. So we're not going to ignore what we now know. And then being aware of what triggers you. And language is very, very important. Language is very important. So even things like when a little baby does a poo in their nappy and you say, oh, what a smelly bum, you stinky bum. That is common language. Whereas actually you're calling your child stinky. You're almost shaming them a little bit. And it starts from there. It starts from the very beginning. And again, when I say that, people go, I'm not shaming my child when I say that. Of course I'm not. Of course you're not. I know you're not. But that stuff starts from the beginning, that language, that sort of ha-ha. And you don't want your child to be spoken to in a way that would make them ultimately, fast forward a few months, feel that. And you really listen to your child. So for me, everybody parents differently. And I have my way of doing it. And I have what I think is important in my beliefs. But ultimately, I'm a coach. So what I do is you tell me what's important to you and I make it happen within the boundaries of being positive and kind and respectful. So I might say your child can go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. You might say, no, my child goes to bed at 6 o'clock. Those things I can tell you what I do, but ultimately it's your decision what works for you. The other thing is very much follow your gut, what feels right. And those newborn years are about being really connected to your baby, really connected and close and listening. Interestingly, I was with a friend last night, and there was another lady who had called me and her baby was constantly crying. And it's because the baby was being passed around a lot to lots of other people. Whereas me and my friend, interestingly, both in the same, were saying, I can't even remember my child crying for the first 2 years because I'd always just have my babies on me. Now, of course, there's colic and there's many other things that come into it. So I appreciate that's not a generic statement. But for me, just because I always had my babies with me, created that connection, that closeness, and all their needs were met. Okay. And again, people have to go back to work and all the rest of it. So it's not fair to make that as a general comment, but it was just in reflection from what she was saying. Actually, I don't remember that happening. So and if you do have to go back to work, you find a wonderful nursery, you find a wonderful childminder, whatever it might be. But those things are important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. One thing a partner always says is, imagine if there was a child here, the way we talk to each other and like how that would make the child feel, who internalizes everything and feels like they're the reason we're fighting or, having difficulties. Or does that show up much? Is in like that internalizing things?
You'll be surprised how you naturally will talk differently in front of your child with your partner.
See, that's my response. You're not a child. I would be different.
No, you would. You absolutely would. You absolutely would. And both you and your partner would talk differently to each other. It would just happen naturally because you talk to each other in a mum and dad capacity. It's very different. And let's say you did have your children and you did talk badly, then you'd think, I don't like this, I'm going to change. So actually, it's nothing like having a child to make you wake up to go, I might need to address that. But it's not a case of it's never too late. I think that's really important. So if you weren't starting from the newborn years, I have people that work with me for like 10, 11, they say, Josie, have I ruined my child? No. There's things that are probably in there that we're going to do a little bit of work on and ease it. But no, you don't ruin your child. You might feel disconnected to your child. We can rebuild a connection. But children are so resilient, so forgiving. I mean, they're brilliant, so easily pleased, happy, So if any time that you make a change to better your parenting is fine. And if, you have been a parent that's really punished or even hit your child, and you're like, God, I really regret behaving that way, then okay, you were doing the best you knew then, right? You were doing the best you knew then. Now you know something different. Let's try something different. I think that's really important to remember, not just in parenting, actually anything. You can look back and go, why did I do that? Well, because you didn't know anything different then. You know something now. So guilt and beating yourself up is completely pointless. And just looking at, right, I've learned something. I'm going to really bring this in now, and now I'm going to do differently. I don't like this idea. I know lots of people have worked with parenting coaches and dragging up all the mistakes they've made. It doesn't achieve anything. I've made loads of mistakes, but I've learned from them and I move on and I try not to make them again. Right?
Yeah, just trying to decrease that self-judgment.
It's important.
Yeah, for sure.
Because also you model that to your children, going back to kids. So what, you can't ever make a mistake? Of course you can. Yeah, that's how we learn.
Where does apologizing come in, and how is that a useful thing to apologize to children about something we've done that we feel?
Yeah. So if you've done something that's not right, then you absolutely apologize because you want to model that.
Yeah. What about saying, I'm sorry you made me do this?
No, you're not allowed to say that. I'm sorry that I lost control. I'm sorry that I shouted. I'm sorry I shouted, but you shouldn't have done that. Really doesn't have the same impact. Right? So you are in control of yourself. If you shout, that's on you. That's not on your child. You are in control of yourself. And goodness me, if we don't model that, then when our children lose it, how can we possibly tell them off? We've got to model being in control. We've got to model being calm. We've got to model handling ourselves. And if we can't model that, then how do we expect our children to do that? So modeling is actually very, very important. How we behave and what we do. And also modeling mistakes, right? I made a mistake, not hiding that from your child.
Yeah.
I love sharing my mistakes with my kids. They love hearing how as a parent you've messed up. They think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah.
Did you really say that? Mom, it's great. They really suddenly they listen on a whole new level. They love to know that we aren't perfect. We make mistakes. Really important. Because and also you don't want to put that pressure on your child to be perfect because no one is.
Yeah. Yeah, and trying to hide those imperfections from your child. Yeah, for sure.
I had a lady who came on a workshop once, and she had a 10 and 12-year-old. And she said, I was told from my mother-in-law, the very, very beginning, the number one rule is you never apologize to your children. You never show weakness. You never apologize to your children. Her children were 10 and 12. I said, Josie, I've never said sorry to them. And bless her, she really started crying because she suddenly realized, the impact that may have had. And after that she made the change, but where's that come from? The idea that you show weakness. This isn't a competition. This isn't I'm the authoritative one, you're the little minion that has to listen to me down there. It's not like that. We're on a level playing field. I'm your parent, you're the child. We connect, we communicate, we share, we talk, we're honest, we make mistakes. That's how it works. It's a relationship.
I always like to look at cause level, and what do you think is that cause of that approach of is it momentum of a highly masculinized society, which is very kind of dominant and disciplined and black and white, and it's come from that? Because obviously
it comes from the idea that children are meant to be seen and not heard. And of course it's I mean it's a lot easier, isn't it, if you stand in a queue in a supermarket for 2 hours and your child stood there quietly and doesn't move. I mean, it's a lot more convenient. Of course it is. It's not real life. But that only is allowed and created by a dictatorship, as in a question I often paint. I have a membership called my Josie's Inner Circle. We do lots of talking there. It's a great place. And one of the questions I ask is, are you a bully? Are you bullying your child? And it's quite a profound question. It's quite a hard question to hear, like to refer to yourself as a bully. But actually, it's a really good way to tap into yourself. Like, is this considered bullying? Like, if this was in a different situation, this would be like bullyish behavior. So you don't get to bully your child, because if you do that, then your child will do that to other people, because that's what you're showing.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you a fan of Rangan Chatterjee's podcast? Do you listen to that much? So Johan, you got the mic now. Hopefully you'll get on there.
Now I've got the mic. Yeah.
He had Johan Harari on, who wrote, he's the TED Talk. He wrote Lost Connections, Chasing the Scream. He's writing a new book. He's written it all about attention and this kind of epidemic of, like, I guess in quotation marks, attention deficit, and what that actually means to wider society. And I thought we could, and I'm conscious of the time, but technology and how this kind of has and the environment in which we are all no doubt living in the modern day, where you've got your attention trying to be orchestrated by 50 different companies when you turn on your phone, and it's kind of like this smash and grab for your attention, because that's what's being sold. And it's like it's a real thing, of course it is, and we all are aware of it. But in terms of like children who are, as we've talked about, facing exams, deadlines, things of that nature, and more technology in schools, homework being on laptops and things like that, and being seasonal creatures, like in the winter, is it appropriate for, and they talked about this on the podcast, which was really, really fascinating. It was like a 3-hour conversation, but all around this kind of stuff, really insightful and stuff I think about all the time. But it's, is it all these, as we talked about, the arbitrary norms of school that don't really mean a lot to children, and that creates that stress, and then they kind of feeds into poor food choices, going to bed late, the sleep, and that kind of vicious kind of cycle, which is no doubt leading to a lack of attention in certain things, and like lack of time being outside, playing in nature. Play is not one thing we've really tapped into, but it kind of feeds into all of this. Children need to play, and they learn through play, and their attention increases when they play, and things like that. Where do you think this kind of fits in to guess our conversation and the work that you do in technology, and how to, I guess, develop a better relationship with it?
Yeah, it's this is personally as a parent, I'm very sensitive to this exact topic.
How old are your 3?
So I've got a 6, 10, and 12. My opinions are quite firm on this, but I am very much in the minority. And many of the people I work with do not follow what I say, and they don't have to, because it's their parenting journey. But it is an absolute huge problem. And I hear it from every single parent I work with around tech and the impact that has, both on the child using tech and them as the parent using tech and being away from the child because they're on a phone or Instagram, whatever it might be. And actually the impact is big, and you can see it. And every single person I've ever worked with who's given their child tech at a younger age has regretted it. Every person. They're basically you have to decide what's important to you as a parent. I guess this is where it comes down to. For me personally, as a parent, I'm really very, very strict around technology. My children don't get free access to technology at all. My girls have a throwaway phone that they make one phone call on a day to say, "Mum, I'm walking home from school." And my older daughter, who's 12, she's the only one out of all of her friends that doesn't have a phone with apps and all sorts of things on. I feel very lucky that she's okay with that. She's fine with it. She just knows that's what it is. And you could argue that I've been feeding that mentality into her from a young age of, you're just not going to get one at that age. Because we know phones are addictive. You get it, you look at it, you're on Instagram. I'm on Instagram doing an Instagram post, and I'm on there for half an hour reading other people's stuff. I mean, it's obviously really good stuff, right? But it's ultimately a complete waste of my life and my learning and my growth and what's important to me. But I get sucked in, and I'm an adult. So what can we possibly expect from our children? Also, there's the safety thing, which is a whole new topic. I did a 3 or 4 big talks last year on sex and sex education, how you talk to your children about that. And it was profound, the amount of stuff that comes out around pornography, and there's just so much. That's a whole different topic, but there's information about that on my website. But the idea that we have to be openly talking to our children, I think, is the key here. You have to be sharing with your children about how things work. And they can have technology, but it's not about trusting your child. So you might trust your child and you might know they're not going to break the rules, but it doesn't mean other people aren't. So trust your child, but they are a child. They are vulnerable. They are open to be persuaded. There are so many elements that come into it. People say to me, I trust my child. I trust my children implicitly. It's got nothing to do with trusting my children. It's about not trusting whoever's out there and the rest of the world. So I think it's naive, actually, as a parent, to think, well, I trust my child. And and also it's about what your limitations are, what you accept. So a lot of families in COVID, when you had 2 working parents, trying to work and have a child to homeschool and then look after, of course, everyone gave them tablets and devices. I get it. I understand why that happened. But they're still in that place now. And parents are saying, Josie, I don't want this anymore. Then you stop it. You change it. You're allowed to change it. But then it's, oh, my child's going to get angry. My child's going to be upset. Okay, your child's allowed to be upset. Your child's allowed to be angry. Your child is allowed to not agree with you. Doesn't mean you're not going to do it. And ultimately check in with yourself of what's important to you rather than what everyone else is doing. That's a classic, isn't it, as parenting? Well, what are they doing? Well, their child sits nicely at the table. Oh, that parent lets their child play Minecraft all day, so I'm going to let mine, whatever it might be.
Yeah, what's worse at the end of the day? Them feeling a little bit kind of left out, I guess. But I guess it's navigating the emotions that come up from that. And again, if emotions are coming up from feeling left out, which is a real thing, of course, but then knowing that doesn't define who they are or how they feel, and
you feel that gap for your child, right? So you don't sit there and leave them left out. You then do other great things with them. So actually, all of my kids still very much hang out and play. So they don't come home and touch technology. Whereas most families will come home, the first thing will be, let's go on the iPad, let's go on the computer. Whereas mine, and also it's very much about your child and how you know your child. So all of my children are very, very physical. They need to move. They're very physical, very strong. They have to be out and moving their body. They play a lot of sport. They do a lot of sport. And we have a lot of fun as a family, do fun things. So I'm engaged with them and, playing, talking, whatever it might be. But you have to fill that gap for them. You can't just say, what you're going to come home and sit and do nothing. So it's about putting in those expectations, deciding around what's important for you as a parent, and actually what you're happy with, what you genuinely have. Some people might not mind their child playing for a few hours every night, then that's okay. But play is very important for development and learning how to communicate and understand and turn, take and share and be resilient and be hurt and not just being transfixed on a screen.
Yeah, for me, it's like, what are they getting from that, which is missing from the real world? Because if you see a child perhaps not wanting to play on their own on a screen, although it's kind of a physical addiction also, but if you feel that's the only thing they're doing, the only thing they're connecting with, then what's missing, like, outside of that?
There's a story. Last year, my son, we invited 4 of his friends over one day, and they came over to play, and he was getting his toys out and all his lovely bits and bobs. And it was really hard. We couldn't find anything anyone wanted to play with that they were happy with. I thought it would be a lot easier. Like, there's these 5 boys in the house just going to play and have a nice time. And we've got loads of great stuff. I couldn't understand it. I was really trying to work out and observe what was going on. And then I said to them, about half an hour in, when nothing was working, nothing was gelling them, or they were playing together, they were all sort of doing their own thing, or they didn't want to do anything. It was a very strange situation. And I said to everyone, I said, okay, let's imagine you're at home. What would be the thing that you'd be doing at home? And every one of these 4 children said gaming, iPad, watching telly. And it hit me. I was like, that's why you're unable to be in this situation and play. This isn't what you would normally be doing. Now, after about 40 minutes of me sort of really working and trying all different things, it then became beautiful and we had a lovely time. Then it was nearly time to go. But it just was so shocking to me that was their answer. And all of these parents, I know them, and they are lovely parents, like really nice people. It's not like they're bad parents or anything. I don't mean that. They're genuinely lovely people. But it just shows that how what's normal, which is play on the iPad, go da da da, whatever, the impact it's having. And you could argue the reason I saw it so blatantly was because I'm a teacher, because I'm a coach, because I've had 2 older children, but it really stuck out for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing that needs a lot more than, I guess, just awareness. It comes down to a personal responsibility, but then there's also a responsibility further afield, which is more cultural, because it's so toxic, even for us as adults. So yeah. It's a real systemic thing that it's not going, it doesn't feel like it's going away or going in the right direction. I don't know what it's going to take to really get addressed higher up, kind of thing.
I think for me, the question as parents on this, like you say, responsibility level, is you ask yourself the question, what's important for me? Like as a parent, as a person, what's important for me? And the other question is, am I doing this because this is what everyone else is doing? They're 2 great questions to start with, because then you look at yourself and you ask those questions and you realize, actually, I do want my child to have some gaming, and I game and I really like it, and whatever, I want my child to game too, then fine. But it's a conscious decision. But then actually, if they're doing that every day, where's their outside time? Where's their play time? Where's their actually just hanging around as a family and being as a unit? Where's that happen? You think about school and several kids in a house, come back from school, do your homework, eat some food, both go off on gaming, go to bed, watch some telly. There's no family connections happening. And that happens more regularly. And again, life's busy. Goodness me, life's busy. You've got more than, one child, or even one child. You're working full time. Very, very busy. So of course it's easy to just not even realize. But hopefully after hearing us talk, it might have gone, oh, actually, I don't really want them to do that as much as they do. I'm going to make that change. And you can. And like I say, I have strict rules, but it doesn't mean that you have to be as strict with yours. You do what's right for you and your family and what you believe. I think that's important to state. There's not one way for everyone. Everyone parenting journey is different. I believe of certain things, but that's me as a mother. Doesn't mean that's what you have to do if I'm coaching you and you say, actually, I don't mind, but how am I going to make this work? And that the positive and the talking kindly and reinforcing and lifting our child up, making them feel empowered and confident and capable. We can do all that.
Yeah. I know we're not going to cover everything here, but I'm trying. But essentially, I think one thing about the whole conversation is stuck out. It's like this separation of like children over here, adults over here, and there's this big divide between, like, it's almost like two different species, but we are the same. It's like, would you feel nourished? Would you feel like you want to connect with other humans after you've binged like 4 hours of being on your phone? No, it's not going to fill you up. It's not going to make you, it's not conducive to nourishment, to kind of feeling good. So it's like understanding what knowing what you need first of all, and then I guess we can outlay that to what our kids,
that's a really good point, actually, making sure that we're looking after ourselves. And also modeling. I mean, I do everything on my phone. My calendar's on there, all the kids' stuff, my work. So being really conscious of what we're modeling as well, I think is a good point, and what we're doing. And like I say, me not getting stuck on Instagram, it's hardly a good place of modeling, is it?
Yeah, because we imitate our environment, like 100%. I did get a really good question, and this is going to open up a whole another layer, I guess. But I want to ask it because my friend did put it forward. It's about trans and gender identity, and I'm sure that comes up in your stuff, and how to support and understand that better. I know it's a big question. It is a big question.
It is a big question.
But how to work out whether we're responding authentically over projecting our fears of like what we think this would mean down the line, or how we can kind of just, I guess, support that if a child, maybe even as early ages like 3 or 4, and like kids wearing dresses and exploring that kind of identity, which is an identity, something you have to identify with, but it's almost like a label that we put on children, just like the name, or just like male, female. It's all in there.
So That's a huge question, and depending who was asking it about what child at what age is very different answers, really. But starting from where you said about like the 3-year-old putting on a dress, or a 3-year-old boy playing with babies and pushing the pram and changing the nappies. Well, isn't that just being a dad, and modeling being a dad and caring and loving? Dressing up in a dress, it's fun, you know. For me, it's about letting your child do what they want to do and do not label it. You leave them to take the lead in all of it. So if your child was putting on a dress and said, I'm pretending to be a girl, you'll say, okay. We don't have to turn it into anything, because there's so many examples of children at young ages that do that and then go on and they aren't transgender, or they don't feel that they want to be. That's not, you know, that's not who they are, but actually they have had a really nice time dressing up and having fun, just like many adults do. So for me, it's about almost not labeling any of it. So if your child's in that process or behaving in a way that might make you think that, fast forward, if you're talking about sort of puberty age children, or even earlier, from sort of 8, 9, I would say, and they're I want to understand it and talk more, you explain it to them. You're just really genuinely open and explain it and talk about it. And if they want to ask more questions, they ask more questions. If they don't, they don't. But I think it's very important to explain to children so they understand. So also they're not ignorant if a situation arises for them in the playground with one of their friends or someone they know. So actually giving children that information, it's very much the same as you would talk to your children about anything. So sex is something that many parents avoid talking to their children about, because they think, oh, it's wrong, it's dirty, I'm going to encourage it. It's the complete opposite. The earlier you talk about it, the easier it is, and the more normal it is. It's not anything. You know, that's how we are reproduced. It's incredible. And then you have sexual relationships, you talk all about that. But trying to do that to a 10, 11-year-old that already knows something or doesn't know a lot or knows something at school, and then it's like crippling for both parent and child to sit there and have that conversation. And your parents have said to me, I just can't do it. I just feel really, really embarrassed about it. The longer you wait, the harder it is. So actually just sharing and being open and showing that you're non-judgmental and you're open to hearing and receiving whatever's coming around would be, I don't know if that's answered the question.
No, I think it has. Just being curious to lean in and not bring your own baggage with it, you know, not bring your own idea of what you think it is or isn't, or like what people are going to think or what you've seen on the news or whatever it is, but just being curious to actually be like, it's a child-led, isn't it? It's child-led philosophies of like, you tell me what's relevant for you right now. And I'm here to learn with you about what that is.
There was someone that I was working with, and I wasn't focusing on that with her, I was doing something else, but it went hand in hand with one of her children from the age of 2 until 7. Whenever he got home, would change into a dress from school. And she was really going down the path of thinking, actually, this, you know, he wants to be a girl. And, you know, what are we going to do? And interestingly, the wait list was 2 years to be seen. And then one day and again, she was very, very, like I said, didn't say anything about it, just very much listened to him. If he wanted to, she didn't call it anything. He listened to what he said. He never said anything openly too much. And then one day, I think he was 7.5, he just went, oh, I've had enough wearing dresses now. And then he just carried on. And that was the end of it. Yeah. So there's also an element of there's playing and there's playing as well. Doesn't always have to be, as a parent, you going, oh gosh, is this the path they're going down? You know, I can see a hard path for them potentially. And actually doesn't have to be anything. That's why we listen to our children.
Yeah, I'm glad we've come on to the sex topic, because that's obviously a big one. But as you said, it's important to bring out that conversation very early on.
It is so important. When I was doing the talk, I did so much research on it because I found it very interesting. And every bit of research, everything I read, every story I read, it pointed to exactly the same thing. You must talk to children about it from a young age and just be really open and transparent. It's so important.
What age is young, would you say? I don't want to ever like put any, you know, black and white, one shoe fits all kind of thing.
Well, I think by 8 years old, children should know what sex is. My children knew at 6 because they were curious about babies and they found it really fascinating and they were asking lots of questions. And I told them and they were like, oh, okay. there wasn't nothing, because they're so little. It's just, okay. But trying to tell a 10, 11-year-old is very, very difficult. And also the other main reason you want to, guys, because you could say, oh, I'll just wait, my child knows nothing about that. Oh, they do. They really, really do. They go to school with other children. They really know. My children are in year 6 and year 7. And when my older daughter was in year 5, the stuff that she was telling me that was coming out of the mouths of children at school was unbelievable. And they didn't know what they were talking about. And I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say on here. I'm happy to say it. Right. So like, I want you to give me a blowjob.
Yeah.
And it's like a boy in year 5 saying it. He didn't know what it meant. He just heard someone say it, and like that made him really big. Of course, I know how we know how children work.
He's probably clicked on a few pop-ups that have come on a screen. Like, it's not hard to go down that rabbit hole now, is it?
It's not, especially when you've got phones. But there's and just to add, my children go to a nice school, so it's not like, every school has this, every single school. And I know this from all the research I did. So my daughter came home and asked what it was. I mean, I hadn't included that in my sex education talk, and I had to tell her. And I didn't really want to tell her at that age. I didn't feel, but my approach is always you're very transparent and very open, because otherwise you leave your children vulnerable to being taken the mick out of. I remember when I was 11 years old, one of my friends, a boy, went, Josie, are you a virgin? Of course I'm not a virgin, like thinking it was like a name of something. I had no idea what it meant. Oh, Josie's not a virgin. And then afterwards I learned what it meant, and I was like, oh no. And I remember being so embarrassed such a long time. So I don't want my children to feel embarrassed because I haven't given them the information.
Absolutely.
So you could argue it's earlier now that we teach them than ever before, but that is a problem with technology, or the outcome, whatever you want to call it, of technology, is that if you don't, then they're going to learn it somewhere else very, very quickly. And if you're not doing it, they're going to then look, aren't they? Children are curious. We're all quite curious. There was a program on, I can't remember what it's called now, but a lady was on TikTok, and she started this clean account as an 11-year-old child. And it was incredible how very, very quickly she ended up going down this rabbit hole by just doing a few clicks. And she showed you how you did it before you knew it. The stuff that she was able to see was shocking, actually. But actually, you can see why a child would wait. Like there was one particular image of a farmer driving his truck with some pigs down the road, and one of the pigs fell out. So basically TikTok had worked out somehow, I mean, I don't know how it works particularly, but the idea that they'd stopped on the video to watch, and that was then counted as aggressive. So that person likes aggressive, assertive behavior. And then the next things that were coming up was racial abuse on a train. It's like, how is that related to a child watching a pig fall out the back? And as my daughter, we're vegetarians as a family, and my daughter is very much about animal rights and cares a lot. So she would have watched that and really gone, what's happened to the little pig? Like, she'd been watching it, but that would have been in the algorithms or however it works, gone down as she likes assertive, aggressive. So this is the thing that we have to just be careful of with parents, right? Is there's a bigger person managing what our children are open to seeing. So talking, teaching, being open, hearing them. When something happens at school, they can come home and they can share it because they know it's a safe place. They're not going to be told, oh, that's disgusting, or I'm not going to tell you that. Or how did you learn that word? How dare you say that word? I could just keep talking. Got to shut me up.
No, it's brilliant. It's useful, and I think it's relevant, and it's really extremely helpful, even for someone who hasn't got kids. So God knows what it's going to be like for him if you do have kids. I mean, I didn't know what a clitoris was when I was 13. I thought it was a nipple. And I said this in front of my older brother. And then all his friends laughed at me. And I was like, damn it, I wish I knew.
Yeah, exactly.
As simple as that. Like I would actually want to know. Are you going to tell me? No, you're just going to laugh at me. Fine. And it, especially with those older siblings who, it's all.
And also just touching on sex even before sex is puberty. So puberty comes after sex. I believe that you should teach sex before puberty even really happens, just when those hormones are starting to rise a little bit. But like wet dreams and periods. Yeah. My God, we've got to talk to that. On one of these talks I was doing, one lady said to me, I got my period and I thought I was dying when she was a child. I mean, imagine that, the fear. And another child said, I thought I was pregnant. I thought I was giving birth. And she didn't even know how a baby was made. Wow. So, I mean, how unfair is it that we're not really empowering our kids to understand that? And boys. So if you've got boys, you teach them about periods. If you've got girls, you teach them about wet dreams.
Mm-hmm.
It's just normal. We all got our own bits going on. That's fine. That's what growing up is. And by being really open and just having respect for each other, just imagine how nice that would be, just to be respectful for the world around and what other people are going through and experiencing, and just rather than, oh, you're bleeding. Like, oh God.
Yeah. And we think there's something wrong with us. And we take on board something that we know feels inherently good, but it's almost like there's
shamed.
There's a shame, there's a narrative, and of course lots of other things feed in.
And the idea, sorry, you're getting me going now, aren't you? The idea that all dads need to talk to the boys about sex and wet dreams, and the girls need to, no, everyone talks about it. It's a wonderful conversation. We're all going to hit puberty, all going to have a period. Be great. You're going to have, and also imagine boys having wet dreams and they've never spoken to their mum about it. Like the embarrassment of waking up before you even started your day, the anxiety and stress, those poor boys. Actually, do you know what, darling? I know what wet dreams are. We've done it. We've all been there, spoken about it. This is what you're going to do. If anything happens, here's some new sheets in your room. Just shove that by the washing machine, and I won't say a thing. We just know what's got to be done. And it's just, and imagine the freedom and the calmness that would bring to a child. Same as a child wetting a bed from a younger age. No shaming around wetting a bed. You cannot choose when you stop wetting the bed at night. It is not something a child has control over. In the day, slightly different. At night, it's all hormone based.
Nice. Let's end it there with wet dreams. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much you could dive in, and yeah, you're doing great work, and it's brilliant, honestly. Yeah. How can I help you, I guess, but put the podcast out there and just send people your way that are curious to learn more. Yeah. Is there anything you want to leave on today? Any kind of final thoughts or anything in the conversation that is worth reiterating, you think? Or
the biggest thing to anybody that's listened to this that's just maybe gone, oh my God, that woman's crazy, listen to all her thoughts, is it's about parenting that feels good for you and parenting that feels good for your child. And if you can tick both those boxes, you're doing pretty well. That's basically it covered. And being transparent with your child, understanding your child individually, and listening to your child. I think that's a good place to end.
Nice. Well summarized.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Thanks for coming on. Awesome.